Okay, here with me is our panel. We have LZ Granderson. We also have Kristen Solstice. Oh, Granderson and Anderson. Kristen Solstice and Anderson, no relation to you guys. We also have Natasha Alford and Dr. Devi Nampiaparampil of NYU School of Medicine. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin with the very serious business of these health issues. So, Senator John Fetterman, and we'll get to actor Bruce Willis. Let's talk about Senator Fetterman, because he has checked himself in after going to the attending physician of the U.S. Congress for his depression, and the attending physician suggested that he go to Walter Reed. So can you just tell us, I mean, there's something like, I think I have the stats here, something like 20%, 22% of Americans at this moment are suffering from depression. 60% of them do not seek help. So what is the factor that would lead a doctor to say, actually, you need inpatient help right now?
Well, inpatient is so hard to get for many reasons because of insurance and other factors. So right now, doctors will probably say it if the person poses a harm to themselves or a harm to others, but that's not necessarily how we decide if a person needs treatment. So typically, in terms of treatment, you could think about non-pharmacologic treatment, pharmacologic treatment. In this case, too, if a person has medical conditions, like if they've had a stroke, then, you know, they also could have depression, or they could have something else that looks like depression. So, for example, a person could have an infection or something else that needs to be treated as well.
So meaning he was checking in to just sort of explore it more and examine it more, you think?
Exactly. Well, first, so a person could have fatigue, they could have a depressed mood. What happens with depression? People can have like a feeling like they don't want to eat, they don't want to move, they feel really tired. These are usually nonspecific symptoms. Now, there can be other things that can really point you towards depression, but you really want to get checked out first. Especially anybody who's had a history of stroke, they can be more at risk for depression because of the area of the brain that might be affected. They can be more at risk of depression because, you know, probably they're having trouble sleeping because of the stroke itself. They also can have trouble just functioning. So depending on how your stroke has affected you, you may have trouble communicating, right? That's going to make you more isolated from other people. You may have trouble with weakness, maybe on one side of your body. So that can affect how you could brush your teeth, how you could get dressed, how you get out, how you interact with the community, etc. So if it's affecting you in all aspects of your life, you also may get situational depression as well. So all of these things could affect you. So he may have actual depression that needs to be treated, but in terms of inpatient access, he may actually have an advantage compared to the average person who may want to get checked in and be hospitalized. Sure. The average person may have a harder time.
Oh, yes, we do know that people with depression have a hard time getting access to mental health for sure. But Natasha, we had read that he had been struggling to adapt to the Senate. He had been, because of his communication issues, he had not been it hadn't been an easy transition.
Well, we also read that he had been struggling with depression long before in his life, right? And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. You know, the depression doesn't go away just because you won an election that was hotly contested. It doesn't go away because you have achieved something. And I actually think it's really brave that he checked in. I think it's brave to share this story publicly because it shows that you can be high functioning with depression. It also shows that chronic illness has a deeper impact than people realize. So people struggle with their health, and that translates to, you know, an emotional and mental struggle as well. So I think it actually makes him relatable, which was what made him so successful when he ran.
And LZ, in fact, there are several lawmakers who have had physical disabilities or have worked through a stroke, and they've come back and been able to work. But there was a time in the not too distant past when depression had such a stigma that it was sort of seen as disqualifying for elected officials.
Well, if you look at the campaign trail, some people still think it's disqualifying, the way that it was used during the primary as well as during the general election. It's a heartbreaking story because he worked so hard, obviously, to get to this place in life. And I wonder if part of the depression is knowing that he can't be the person that he wanted to be in this moment, and that perhaps he's letting people down. There's also could be depression linked to the fact that his family are very concerned about him, but he doesn't want to let the country down. Remember what the environment was like when he was running and how critical it was that when he won that seat unexpectedly, that there was a sigh of relief for one side of the party, recognizing that they have power. Maybe he's feeling some guilt knowing that if he bows out, perhaps that power becomes in doubt. It's heartbreaking because there's more than just his own health that I'm sure he's processing during all of this.
Yeah. Kristen, Senator Ted Cruz sent a kind tweet out today. And, you know, we don't...
Who?
Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh, okay. question.
I'll read it to you, Elsie, since you seem to be doubting. He says, Heidi and I are lifting John up in prayer. Mental illness is real and serious, and I hope that he gets the care he needs, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on. Please respect his family's request for privacy. That wasn't, I don't think that was necessary, and I think that that was kind because, as we know, we live in this time when people seize on perceived weaknesses in the other side or their opponents.
There are so many Americans who are touched by mental illness in their family, for their loved ones, for themselves, and it does not care what party you're in. And so good for Senator Cruz for sending that note. Right now, Senator Fetterman deserves our empathy, our compassion, our care, our understanding, in the same way that voters deserve the transparency that he's providing them right now about his condition. I'm sure that he is not the first person to serve in the United States Senate to face a really big mental health challenge. He may be one of the first to be as open about it as he is, but voters deserve this type of transparency both before and after an election.
And speaking about the voters, at what point does it become complicated? How long will they give him, I guess? How long will constituents give him for his recovery?
That's a great question, because I really think it depends on the motive behind the reason why they voted for him in the first place. Was it about Trumpism or was it about him? Where are their allegiance? Is it to the party or is it to the candidate? Because if it's to the party, then maybe the patience isn't as long because they just want to secure a Democrat in that seat. But if it's to him, maybe it is more patience that he'd be met with and more grace.
Yeah.
And I think that either way they have to tread carefully, right? Because we saw that attacks from Dr. Oz on his physical health, in some ways, it did not work the way that he intended. It actually rallied a lot of people to support John Fetterman because of compassion, empathy, and again, seeing themselves in someone who was being relatable.
Certainly people can relate to depression, people can relate to strokes, people can relate to health issues. But at the same time, their constituents do want services at some point, and we'll just see what that balancing act is. And it's early days, obviously, and we'll see how that goes.